Okie dokie. Awesome. Welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Got a cool demo today using some stamps. If anyone joined last night for the Ventura Potters Guild, I did a little short demo presentation on there. If you saw it, thanks for joining. We did some fluting tool carving and kind of talked about luminaries and kind of a general overview of some of our carving tools. Today though, I'm going to talk about some of our impression stamps, specifically the like sort of pattern scale type designs that we have. So if you're familiar with our impressions, or if you've seen this sheet before, these are the shapes that we have. I'm gonna be talking about the 21 to 25. They're right here. They are sort of meant to pattern like scales. And so I'll get into that a little bit more. You may have seen, a couple basic shapes like these first two. We have a few unique ones and they're really neat, but I have gotten a few questions on, how do you use them, or how do you pattern them, and how do they go together? So that's what we're going to talk about. And then I'm going to kind of finish on a piece that I have. I've had this sitting around, and I'll show you how it works on a pot. So first things first, these are the stamps, and they're really simple. That's your shape. If you have a tool, they will fit on the back of the tool. So if you want to use it that way, go for it. The way these work is it's really best if you don't actually stamp the whole shape. So they're kind of meant to push in just the top of them, or just one side of it. And I'm gonna angle this so you can see it. But this is 21. So when I push this in, I'm gonna put more pressure. I'm gonna kind of lean it forward, rock it back and forth, just like that. And so just to show you, it's not the whole shape, it's just sort of like that front, sort of like lean forward. And that's important. So that'll kind of make a difference as you start to pattern these. And same goes for a lot of these shapes. You don't have to use the whole thing. This is meant to just sort of make a partial impression. And so the next one, I'm gonna line up, I'll hold it up for this part too, literally right next to it, right there. So the bottom back corner here is basically touching or lined up directly where that previous stamp finished. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, lean it forward, sort of rock it in there. So that's two. And basically what it leaves is it leaves this little triangle part right there in between each stamp. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll get a feel for it, if you leave too much space or not. But that is sort of the general lineup. So I'll do 4 going across, just like that. I guess you could look at it like this. And then the next stamp is going to be, I'm gonna line up that little V in there with that little triangle that I made. And I'm gonna do the same thing. So just lean it forward and just press the front of it. Just like that. So this little V shape at the top, that sort of captures the space between those two previous ones. And then you just do it again. So right here. And as long as you did that spacing right on the first line, you should line up. Just like this. And you can get the idea, you're alternating every single one. So that's in general how these work. And I'll show you again on a few more of these, but the key is just that first row, you wanna make sure that spacing's correct, and then these just sort of fit right in between. And then you can play around with how far you're pressing in, and again, how much of that stamp you're using. I'm really only using like the front half of it, but it's going to create this really cool scale pattern. The next one, and so this is probably a really easy one to look at. It's just kind of a basic triangle. We have a few others. For example, this one is very similar, but it has some curved sides to it. So So this one lines up very similarly. And then I'm going to go kind of right there with the next one. Just like that. So very similar pattern. It's got a little bit more of a curved side rather than those straight sides. So those two I'd say are kind of on the simple basic way of doing things. I do have one similar one. So 24 is very close to 21, except it's got an additional little indent. So I'll show this one quick here. So this one has a little raised part, and so it actually leaves just a little bit of an extra, I'd say like texture in there. And you can always come back, and I always, you may have seen it before, but come back with another little stamp or a carving tool and add a little detail in there. But you can imagine with a little bit of glaze, it just has a little extra texture. The two tricky ones, and they look like this. So it's 25 and 23. They pattern the same, but sometimes they're a little bit harder to line up right from the beginning. But I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm using that front half. I'm going to space this one out right about here. And go right in between. So right where those two ended. Just like this. So it will make that similar pattern, but it's got this little teardrop. It's kind of got the swoosh on the side as this top one, but it's got a little teardrop shape in the middle. So I really like this one. Kind of has like a watery effect to it. 25 is maybe the trickiest to pattern, but I do think it's one of the coolest. And I'll put this one in. It's not as long, so you just have to kind of be aware when you're rocking it. You want to get a little, it feels like you're getting a little bit more of that full impression. And then this one, I'm not going to line up directly next to that previous stamp. I'm actually going to come over just a little bit. And if it helps, you can sometimes make a mark. I'm going to come over just a little bit, and you'll see why. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between. Just like that. So this bottom one, there's a little bit more space in between. That's kind of the secret to this last one. Then it lines up, that little U shape on top will fit right between there. So that's the spacing that you want with this specific stamp. Rock that on there. And again, once you get that first sort of line across, it's a lot easier to just sort of maintain that spacing. But this one makes a neat pattern like this. It looks a little bit more, I'd say like maybe basket weavy, and you've got these extra little details that go down in there. So I really like, you know, these two, they just have a little bit more texture. They're really unique. And this last one, the key is just spacing that out a little bit. Cool. Okay, so what does that look like on a piece? Go ahead and show you. I do have had this jar sitting around here for a while. I'll leave that there. It's a nice leather hard right now, and so it's kind of going to be perfect for using these stamps. Whenever I'm doing it on an actual piece, you know, we kept all of our stamps very small where they're not going to indent or deform the whole piece, but I still always put a finger or hand underneath to support it. I'm going to be using that 25 at the end, and I'm going to start by going around. I have all these horizontal lines trimmed in. I'm just going to go around this top edge and leave that. It's all about setting that first line, so I'm going to leave a little bit of spacing in between each one. So we'll start just like this. And I can feel it pushing on the other side, which is why I just support it with my finger in there. Just give her a little turn. And I'm trying to keep the same distance from that horizontal line as I'm going across. And it's important when you're doing these, you can get a little bit better result as long as you're kind of rolling it. It's exaggerated, but you're kind of rocking it back and forth. That way, make sure to get everything nice and even. And as I'm coming around to the other side, I'll keep going with what I've got. I'm kind of thinking here, I think I'll be able to fit, trying to decide here whether it's going to be 2 or 3. So I think I'll try to fit 3, which means I'm just going to crunch this one or sort of move it in just a little bit, just to try and get a little bit more space. Oh, that is going to be tight. So I probably should have done 2, but that's okay. We'll crunch this one a little bit more. And so that'll be an interesting spot. One thing to keep in mind is as you're stamping, if your piece is getting wider, it's gonna take more. So that might end up looking okay as we fit more stamps in. So now I'm gonna continue going around, and with that second row, add this in here. Sometimes I like to go back, kind of backwards, and just we'll see where those end up. So that one area is going to look a little bit tighter, but it won't be as noticeable in the end. And then I'll do one more row. And this one's ending kind of right on this middle sort of shelf, I'd call it, or like middle line. Just like that. So that's what it looks like doing 3 layers across there. And then I think I'm gonna do one more. This one's gonna be a little bit shorter. Just like that. And then what I thought would be kind of neat on this is just do a short little carving I'm gonna use the P15 and just make a couple sort of a little bit diagonal lines. So I'm gonna start right in the middle of these stamps and just kind of go to there. And I'm not gonna go every single one, I'm gonna go probably every other one. Give it a slight angle, sort of curve to it. And I'm trying not to go too deep, just kind of a light groove. And then this one, I'm gonna kind of split the difference here. Right there. And then what I like to do on some of these is, this is number 2. It's just a very simple corner shape. I'm gonna add this right into the bottom. So this one goes really well. It basically pairs with those 3mm grooves. So it'll line right up in there. But it just gives a very nice, consistent, little tight corner. So we'll stick this in there. And I'm trying to match the depth of that groove I just made. Like that. And then we'll finish off with one of my favorites. It kind of looks like, it's almost like a fish whale tail. It's number 14. This one is also going to fit right in that groove, and I'm just going to add it kind of right on the end here. So basically it makes this little swooping arc and then a nice little finish there. So I'm going to put this on each one. Just like that. And that's it. So just makes a fun little pattern up top, and we kind of divide that big open space with a few other little grooves. That spot's a little bit tighter, but that's okay, because as you're looking at it, you don't really notice. I don't mind kind of freehanding it a little bit like that. And then that scale, so that was the number 25. Let's see, where'd it go? Yep, the number 25. So that is the scale pattern that you're gonna get using that little impression. Put a lid on there, and you're good to go. So fun little jar, and some cool stamp patterns that you can mess around with. That's kind of it. So hopefully this, if you had some questions, if you have been having trouble using some of these little stamps, that's how you do it. So keep in mind that very first line you lay down is gonna set your spacing for everything else. And let's see. Yeah, so set that first line, get the spacing down, and then it's just kind of, you know, really light. You're gonna roll that stamp on there. And then keep in mind, you're not pressing the whole stamp. It's kind of that first half of it. So keep that in mind. But anyway, hope you enjoyed a little show and tell demo there. Thanks for joining. If you want to see other stamp related things, or if you have any other questions, let us know. We'll kind of tailor these to what you guys want to see. So again, definitely comment and, you know, tell us what you want to see. Thanks for joining, and have a good rest of your Tuesday.